In this episode, I sit down with Lacey Picazo, the founder and principal of Zoco Design, about how she helps businesses and startups grow their companies. Lacey is an entrepreneur at heart that uses her knowledge of business and her creative ability to get to the heart of a branding strategy very efficiently. As one of the fastest growing creative companies in the Midwest, Lacey is not only a great business owner, but a super mom and a big inspiration to other creative entrepreneurs just like myself. So let's go to the Zoco office where I meet with Lacey. So, to get started, can you tell us your name and how you help people create business?
Yeah, so Lacey Picazo, I'm the founder and principal of Zoco Design. We help our clients and our partners create business by finding what challenges they're having in running their business, what challenges they're having in connecting with their customers and their different audiences. We help them map out that journey for, throughout their customers' engagement with the brand. Where are the opportunities where they can better connect with their customers, whether that's through marketing or through their product or through their services. So we're really more of a strategic design agency in that sense, that we're really thinking about the overall user experience. And then we map that to different touch points that we can build with them, whether that is marketing campaigns, creating websites or digital campaigns to actually enhance their marketing strategy.
So how do you go about, as soon as a client walks in the door or sends that email, what's kind of the process to learn about kind of where those pain points are for them?
Yeah, it's mostly conversation and it's not really scripted. We have kind of some set questions that we ask to try to uncover some of those insights, but it's more or less just taking an interest in their business and not just going with the client's first request. We get a lot of requests for, can you build us a social media campaign? Can you build us a website? Can you build us a what have you? But then when we start to ask why they want that thing and what their pain points are that make them believe they want that thing, not oftentimes, but fairly frequently, we start to find that that might not be the best actual avenue to support that pain point, that there might be a better way to enable them to do what they want to do.
Yeah. So why do you feel like, maybe this is a tough question, but why do you feel like what you do is so important for businesses?
I think it's so important because, well, first of all, as a business owner, and we struggle with this ourselves, like you are busy actually enacting on your business and on your vision, on whatever your product is, whatever your service is, that's where your focus is, plus a million other things, especially for a small business. And so you typically don't take the time to think through your own marketing. Plus, even if you are, it's not what your specialty is. Just like, why you wouldn't have a designer typically do your own taxes. Many designers do, but it's better to offload that to somebody that's the only thing they spend their time thinking about. I think it's really important because your brand, your marketing, how you visualize yourself, how you talk about yourself is really the perception that you're going to build on in the community and among your customers and your audience. And so, branding is important because your company isn't what you say it is, it's what everybody else thinks it is. The example I give is McDonald's can say all they want, that they're healthy and that they have salad options and they're whatever, but the brand they've built is fast food, it's casual, it's cheap and dirty and quick, and it's not that brand, and so that's just how they're going to be known. And wherever you can help lead and guide people to build up in their heads the perception of your brand that you want them to have, it's going to make them think you're more legitimate, more credible, more XYZ brand words that you want them to believe about you.
Yeah. Is there like a specific, so there's obviously a moment where they're kind of like, okay, I need the help of somebody like Zoco.
Yeah.
Is there something common that comes to why why they end up calling you? Is there something like an event or?
I think it's different for different customers. I think probably the two bigger reasons are, one, they recently just suffered a pain point, so maybe they lost a client or they lost a customer because of XYZ. Typically you don't know that though. You typically don't know, oh, I have a real bad website and it's costing me leads because I don't look legitimate. Typically you're not going to get that phone call that says, hey, I'm not going to do business with you because you don't have a website or you have a real lousy one.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more based on conjecture, but sometimes they find that out. Like maybe they'll lose a proposal because they didn't think they were big enough or they didn't have the capabilities. And then they say, oh no, like we absolutely do have that. Why would you believe that? And it's typically the marketing, the positioning of the company. But then the other one is they've known for a long time that they should be doing whatever this marketing activity is, and they haven't done it because they either haven't had the time to think through it or haven't had the budget to do it. And so oftentimes we also get asked to be brought into brands and products when opportunity hits, when they have the capacity to think about their challenges and to think about making a difference.
Yeah. Do you think that branding is important for do you think it's necessary for all businesses to have good branding?
To a degree, yes. I think there are exceptions always to the rule. Like, you know, if you're a holding company that doesn't have any visual presence and isn't really known, then no, not really. But to some level, and you know, it's obviously very different for different levels. But I've seen many times where somebody assumes, oh, I don't really need a website. I don't really need to think through my brand. But then they might lose business because of that. And again, you don't know always why you lose opportunities or why you're not getting the leads that you think you are. But again, like think about your own behavior. If you're looking into any new services or new products, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to Google it. And if there's not a website there, or if there's not any presence of a brand there, it's going to change your thought and your perception of that company. For better or for worse, you are probably going to think that they're not legitimate, or you're going to think all sorts of different things. And so I think to some degree a brand and some sort of presence is essential for almost all companies. It's just different levels of what that, you know, investment needs to look like, because it's less important for some companies than others.
Yeah. Do you think that so a lot of people, they kind of struggle with the idea of where do they start with their company? Do they start with a really great product and then kind of work on the branding, or kind of like the chicken or the egg?
Yeah.
What do you think about that?
You know, I think, so we work with a lot of startups. We work with a lot of big corporates too, but we work with a lot of startups. And I think one of the number one things that we see people not investing in early, if you haven't done this before, if you haven't branded the company or marketed it, you have a product, whatever, is talking to their customers. And not just friendlies, not just, you know, hey, I'm talking to my mom and my aunt and this person I've known for 5 years, because you're always going to get biased answers from them. The best thing you could do early stage in your company before you start marketing, before you start branding, is to talk to people and talk to them in very unbiased, non-leading ways to find out if they really value your product or your service. You know, find out what they're doing now that they wouldn't use your product or service, so you can identify some pain points for why there's actually a spot in the market for you, and to just make sure that they'd be willing to pay for it. If you're talking to your friends, you know, and you just ask a question like, hey, here's my thing, what do you think about it? Of course they're just going to say, yeah, that's cool, man. But like if you're asking questions in the right way, you can really start to figure out not only would they actually value this, would they come back to it time and time again, would they pay for it, and ask those questions in the right way. And in agencies like Zoco, we can help support in that if that hasn't been done yet. It's actually some of our favorite work is figuring out what those human insights are. But I think that's one of the first places you should start, because it really informs not only your business model, whether or not you should have a business model, but how you connect with your different audiences. And those insights are really valuable to making sure your marketing plan, your branding, all those things are much more targeted, which makes them more effective.
Yeah, that's great. So you mentioned that you work with startups.
Yeah.
And it seems like, from my point of view anyway, it seems like you work with a lot of startups. Can you explain why or what it is about startups that you like working with?
Well, so I've gotten pretty involved in the startup community. I had a startup in maybe 2010. We got a little bit of funding and went through the process and got to know people in the community. And I just found that, like the creative community, the startup community in Columbus is just really supportive, is very cohesive. A lot of people are just excited about what everyone else is doing and looking to help each other out. So we felt excited to be part of that community. Why Zoco specifically likes working with and helping startups. We love working with founders, with people that are visionaries and have a vision for their product, because they're just really invested and excited about the impact we can make with them. And then that's the other piece, like we can see it firsthand. Like we love doing work for big enterprises because it's thrilling to us, maybe it's an ego thing, that we can make a difference for a really huge company, but it's not the same because we can see it firsthand and feel it firsthand with a startup and see, their company take off over the next year or what have you. That makes us feel like we're a part of it, and some of that is driven by our efforts together. So again, maybe it's ego driven, but we love being able to see that impact.
I think that's awesome. I mean, I'm really similar in the way that it is. The smaller the company, the kind of just the better it feels to kind of help them and
making someone's dreams come true.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, in some cases it's strange because it's sometimes easier to help, for me anyway, it's sometimes easier to help smaller companies or just individual owners than it is bigger companies. Maybe it's because bigger companies, they sometimes have already done a lot of things and it just needs to be better than what it was before. And with individuals, they just need that thing to kind of get started,
Right, like how big of a dent can you really make in a huge company? It's just incrementally better, an incremental change. But with a company that doesn't have even a foundation yet, you're part of that ground floor and you really feel like you're helping set them up for success over their next 20 years.
Yeah. So one of the things that that I've seen you do over the last year was your talk at Startup Week, where you kind of you gave really actionable advice to startups about branding. Can you talk about a little bit about that talk and kind of how it came about?
Yeah, just through networking and through my own development, I've been to a lot of talks. Our team has supported Startup Week all 3 years and have given in-kind services for that. So we've gone to a lot of different things, and I think the talks that I'm most excited about are the ones where I feel like I'm really engaged and thinking about actionable ways to take what I'm learning and apply it to my company, or to Zoco. But I think the biggest challenge with talks and with conferences and everything is that you're there, you get excited, you take notes, you want to take action on it, but then the next day you're back into the normal tasks of being in your inbox and going to meetings, and you just don't have time, and that excitement starts to dwindle and fizzle until you just don't do anything with it. So I think wherever you can make the most use of that hour or whatever amount of time you have to get people to actually take that next step and situate it more like a workshop where they're actively thinking about how does this apply to my company or to my personal brand, and how can I take these insights and actually work through them in real time. I think that's helpful and valuable, and then you're giving them the tools that they need to actually apply what you're trying to teach.
Yeah. I would imagine that maybe it's sort of a two-way street where you're also learning stuff from them. Is that true?
If it's a small group and it can be more hands-on, absolutely. And then they get to ask questions because the way you've set it up is it has them already thinking about how they're applying it to their own business.
So a lot of smaller companies and startups, one of the things that I often see is that they don't have a whole lot of money, right? That's pretty understandable. And they have to kind of budget, very strictly in certain areas. And that area is often marketing and branding. So I see that, they're going on stock image sites, just stock template type things all the time. What do you say to that person that is just kind of looking for those kinds of things?
Yeah. I think it's really case by case. I think the number one thing that startups need is to work with a partner that can help them think through their resources and isn't just going to try and sell them something because that's what they think they need, who's willing to say, pump the brakes, I don't think you need this, or here's where we can reallocate your budget, who's a lot more strategic and contextual in their thinking. I think what a lot of startups do is either, like you said, they're going to get things that are templatized that they can repurpose a little bit and use for themselves, or they're going to freelancers, which are inherently more cost effective than agencies. I think those are still better steps than doing nothing, absolutely, and I think as a Band-Aid, that's a good situation, but I mean, at the end of the day, you get what you pay for. And so, in those cases, you don't have something that's customized for you and that's really going to work as well for your business. it may not be the right fit long term. And I think that the hazard of that, especially with foundational things like branding and website, which should and can evolve over time, but I think what typically happens is a startup starts with a foundation of more templates and of cheaper options, and then 3 years in, when they have the budget to do it the right way, then they feel restricted by fear of, oh, well, this is what we're known as now, and this is our visual that everyone knows, and so we should just stick with it. And they end up with something that isn't really fitting for them and isn't going to have the wear long term that's going to be a fit down the road. Or they just think, oh, I've already invested in this, it's done, it's over, it's a check mark. Whereas, I think as soon as the resources are available, they should try to do it the right way, because it is so important to building the perception. I mean, if you could influence the perception of your customers for any company to be more positive, like that's one of the biggest impacts you could make to your business and in getting more customers. We've seen time and time again, companies take off after just investing a little bit of time, because it is that emotional connection you're creating with your different audiences and how you want them to think about you, and it has a big impact. So yeah, I think that the hazard is that if you're going to place a Band-Aid on something long term because the resources are slim, just be willing to reinvest down the road as soon as the resources are there.
Yeah. So you mentioned you get what you pay for, right?
Yeah.
I'm assuming that you started out as a freelancer. Is that true? Okay, so you know the difference then between a freelancer and an agency.
Yeah.
What is it? What's that value?
Oh man, that's like a tricky question, because I don't want to get in trouble for my answer. I think it really depends on the freelancer that you're working with. I think that there's obviously a value in having a team, which is why I didn't want to be a freelancer for long. Just the fact that you're getting a multitude of people's experiences and ideas. Like, we're really intentional about never having one person working on a project here. We try to get the entire lens of our team as much as we can to collaborate on things, because it makes the work stronger. Because you're taking, the experiences of this one guy who's worked in retail his whole life, and the experiences of this other person who has great UX chops, and this other person who's wonderful in illustration, and marrying all of their talents in ways that are unique. So I think that's the more obvious difference with an agency. I think that, for both agencies and freelancers, not all are created equal. Like, we've worked with freelancers that are definitely more production, and that, like, you tell me what you want and I'll make what you want and it'll look really good, but they're not thinking through the strategy of asking the right questions to determine how that's going to work for the business, how you can analyze that and make it better. But then there are plenty who do too. But for a client, they typically don't know how to determine if that person is that type or not. They're mostly just looking at their work and saying that looks really great or it doesn't look really great. So I think that's the hazard there. But yet, too, then if you're working with an agency, do you work with a small agency, one who's really specialized, one who's bigger? I could talk on that forever, but I feel like that's probably not where we should take this. Yeah.
Okay, so before you can help a business, what must they have already done?
Yeah. It's different. I think we can help a business at any stage. It's just what we would choose to help them with. So like I'd already said, I think that in order to be successful with design work, they need to really understand their audience, how their audience feels about their product, or what their current pain points are that the product's solving for, or service. I think that that's essential to know to make marketing, branding, design efforts really effective. If they haven't done that, though, we can assist in doing that because we're a human-centered design shop. So I don't know if there's any point that we can't engage, but there are points where we've said, whether we do it, you hire somebody else to do it, or you do it yourself, you should really do XYZ things before you move forward in these efforts. And have sometimes told clients that we wouldn't want to engage with them until they do that, because then we feel like we're unfairly maybe taking their money and working on a project that might not have the effect that they're hoping, because they don't really understand the problem they're solving yet.
Yeah, that's a great answer. All right, so you've answered all these questions so efficiently that we are already at the last question, and that is, where can people find out more about you and Zoco?
Yeah, okay, easy. Our website, zocodesign.com. You can go to my personal Twitter for ramblings, you can go to Zoco's Twitter. Although honestly, Zoco on social media, Instagram and Twitter and all the things, is pretty much just culture photos more than it is our work, because we like to hang out together and do fun things. So that might be a better perspective for somebody who wants to see what it's like to work here than our work. But we try to update our website more regularly. But like, I think I already kind of made a point of this, like the carpenter's house is always in disrepair. You know, we don't take as much time on our own stuff as we know we should, because we're busy with clients.
All right, so I lied. I have another question now. So how much does kind of your personality reflect into Zoco?
Probably a lot.
Yeah.
It's funny, actually. So, you know, I think diversity in design is super important. I think having, and I built a company around this, having people who have different capabilities, but then intentionally working on things they're uncomfortable with, makes the work stronger. So we'll never specialize in one specific type of work or one specific type of client. Hold me to it. But at the same point, like our team all took personality tests yesterday, and we've done this before, but we have some new team members, so we did it again. And so many of us have similar traits showing up in that, which is good because we're very aligned in our values and what we want to get out of work, which I think makes everyone really happy with their jobs and the environment. But at the same point, it made me like question, is that a negative thing if we're all like a similar type of leader, have similar communication styles? It makes work really great, but I'm curious what gaps that leaves in our thinking. I don't know. So yeah, I mean, the answer is totally. The company is very built on some of my own quirks and traits.
I think that's awesome, and I think it definitely, the reason I ask is because, you know, you always have that suspicion, and you kind of see things, and whenever you do follow you, like, personally on Twitter and stuff like that, I'm just like, I wonder how much of that, and I know you put, one of the things that you also talked about in your Startup Week talk was just about how young everybody is, and kind of the benefit of that.
We're basically all millennials. We have somebody who's broaching either end of the spectrum who could really fall in either category, but for the most part, we're all millennials. And I think that plays to our advantage sometimes, and I think at other times it's maybe a disadvantage. But we just decided that we're going to be real clear on who we are and what our value prop is for our clients, and either they love it and they're excited by it and excited for what we can add to their business, or they're not, and they want more gray hair on the team, or they want more whatever on the team, and that's fine. We're just then not the right partner for those clients.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. That's great. That's it.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. Awesome.